Let me warn you right now. What you're about to hear is not just another political scandal, not just another influencer meltdown, and definitely not another conservative couple airing their dirty laundry for clicks. No, this is the kind of story that makes you look at your phone twice, turn the volume up, lock the door, and whisper, "Wait, did Erika Kirk really just say that?" Because tonight, the woman who spent years smiling behind podiums, posing in charity galas and pretending everything was perfectly normal, has finally cracked open the vault. And inside that vault, a name nobody expected. A name that flips this entire murder mystery on its head. A name that sends both Washington and the internet into a collective emotional shutdown. JD Vance. Yes. That JD Vance, the darling of political reinvention, the self-branded working-class prophet turned elite power player. And according to Erika Kirk, his hands might not be as clean as America thinks. So the question is simple: if Charlie Kirk's death wasn't an accident, if it wasn't random, if it wasn't fate, then exactly how deep does JD Vance's influence go? And what pushed Erika to expose the one man everyone assumed was untouchable? The moment Erika Kirk opened her mouth, the entire political internet froze like someone hit the emergency brakes on a runaway train. Because for years, Erika was the perfect example of conservative femininity. Calm, elegant, polished, and carefully trained to say absolutely nothing that could jeopardize the empire she and Charlie Kirk spent their careers constructing. But when a woman like that finally decides to talk, when she finally decides to drop the mask and unload the truth she's been choking on, you already know whatever comes next isn't going to be soft. It's not going to be gentle. It's not going to be a misunderstanding. It's going to be nuclear. And from the very first sentence, she delivered exactly that. She said there were things the public was never supposed to know, that Charlie's death wasn't the clean-cut tragedy the media packaged it as, that behind closed doors, behind the choir of politicians offering thoughts and prayers, behind the dramatic candlelight vigils and polite PR statements, there was a deeper stain. Something political, something personal, something strategic, something curated, calculated, and shielded from daylight. And when the interviewer asked her directly, "Are you saying Charlie didn't die the way we were told?" she didn't blink. She didn't tremble. She didn't hesitate. She simply stared at the camera and whispered, "Ask JD Vance." Instantly, the room's oxygen vanished. The clip went viral in less than 4 minutes. People were screen recording it before the live interview even ended. Comment sections turned into war zones. Every political commentator scrambled to upload a reaction video titled something like, "What did Erika just say?" And the conspiracy channels practically had an emotional breakdown of excitement. Because Erika didn't accuse some random staffer. She didn't accuse a rival influencer. She didn't even accuse one of Charlie's petty political enemies. She pointed directly at JD Vance, a sitting political figure with enough influence to quiet an entire news cycle if he wanted. And once that name dropped, the internet did what the internet always does best. It began digging. Suddenly every awkward photo of Charlie and JD Vance together resurfaced. Every uncomfortable interview clip where Charlie mentioned internal disagreements. Every moment where JD Vance's smile looked a little too forced. Where his compliments sounded a little too scripted. Where his political stance seemed a little too convenient. People started stitching old footage and discovering moments that were ignored when they first aired. Like the time Charlie joked on stage that JD Vance owed him a favor. Or the time JD Vance said getting involved in certain internal disputes could get messy. At the time, nobody thought anything of it. Now those clips are evidence boards, but the most disturbing thing wasn't the old clips. It wasn't even Erika's statement. It was the way JD Vance reacted. Instead of addressing the accusation, instead of showing outrage, instead of even pretending to be confused or insulted, he went silent. Completely silent. No tweet, no statement, no spokesperson. Nothing but the eerie calm of someone watching everything unfold while calculating their next move. And that silence was enough to send conspiracy theorists into a frenzy, because everyone knows the guilty don't scream. They wait. Meanwhile, people close to Charlie started leaking their own pieces of the puzzle. Anonymous insiders claimed Charlie had been stressed, paranoid, and unusually secretive in the weeks before his death. One source swore Charlie was preparing to expose something massive. Another claimed he was planning to cut ties with a high-profile political figure. And yes, everyone assumed that figure was J.D. Vance. Someone else leaked a message where Charlie reportedly warned a friend, "If anything happens to me, tell them to look higher than my enemies. Look at the people who pretend to be on my side." The internet dissected that message like it was a sacred scripture. And when Erika confirmed that Charlie had multiple meetings with J.D. Vance in the month before he died, the narrative turned from rumor to obsession. People started remembering how Charlie miraculously lost weight, changed his messaging tone, and disappeared from public events around the same time. Internet detectives were connecting dots like their Wi-Fi bill depended on it. Suddenly, everyone was pointing out how unusual J.D. Vance's public interactions with Charlie were. Like how he always touched Charlie's shoulder in interviews, how he always spoke for him, how he always redirected questions Charlie didn't want to answer. It was subtle. It was quiet. But now, looking back, it was suspicious, and while the internet kept building theories, Erika added even more fuel by claiming Charlie had a folder. A physical folder? A folder filled with documents that he described as the end of someone's career. She didn't say whose career. She didn't say what the documents contained. But she did say Charlie hid the folder because he didn't trust the people around him. Not even the people in his inner political circle. And since Charlie's death, the folder has allegedly disappeared. No one knows where it went. No one knows who took it. But everyone has the same guess. At this point, the public had two questions. First, why did Erika wait this long to say something? And second, what exactly pushed her to finally break the silence now? Because Erika is strategic. She doesn't speak impulsively. She speaks surgically. And if she's pointing her finger at J.D. Vance, it's because she believes the consequences no longer matter. Either she's done protecting him, or she finally realized he never protected her in the first place. And with that, everything shifted. Because if Erika is telling the truth, then Charlie Kirk wasn't just a political figure who died tragically. He was a man who died in a web of power struggles, ego battles, confidential deals, and political alliances that were never meant to be seen by the public eye. And J.D. Vance wasn't just a colleague. He was the key, and that's exactly where things take a darker, sharper turn next. Because the moment Erika's interview hit 10 million views, people started sending in their own evidence. Suddenly, whistleblowers who had been silent for years decided now was the time to speak. Anonymous accounts claiming to be former staffers came forward with stories that sounded too detailed to ignore and too specific to dismiss. They talked about closed-door meetings between Charlie and J.D. Vance that stretched late into the night. They talked about arguments, loud ones where Charlie allegedly accused J.D. of betrayal. One person claimed Charlie walked out of one meeting red-faced and furious, muttering that J.D. was playing both sides and too deep into something he couldn't back out of. Of course, the internet took those whispers and ran with them at lightning speed. People started combing through public records, travel logs, deleted posts, anything that could connect J.D. and Charlie beyond the polite handshake moments the media showed. And then someone found something that sent the conversation into a straight-up frenzy, a leaked security report from a private venue. The report listed attendees for a closed political donor dinner just 2 weeks before Charlie's death. The names were exactly who you'd expect: billionaires. Lobbyists, familiar politicians, but buried halfway down the list. Right next to each other were the names Charlie Kirk and J.D. Vance. That wouldn't have meant anything except the report also noted heated exchange on terrace. Subject refused to elaborate. And guess who the two subjects were? The internet practically levitated from excitement. People were making hour-long videos analyzing that one line. Heated exchange. The kind of phrase that sounds like a placeholder for something far more violent, far more emotional, far more dangerous. What were they fighting about? What was said? Why did the report exist in the first place? And why didn't either of them ever mention being there? The more people looked, the uglier the picture became. One particularly chaotic online sleuth found archived footage from an event a month earlier where J.D. Vance seemed irritated and annoyed even when Charlie took the stage before him. The clip wasn't dramatic when it first aired, but now viewers were pointing out the way J.D. clenched his jaw, the way he whispered something to his aide, the way he refused to clap for Charlie's opening remarks. People timestamped every micro-expression. They zoomed in on J.D.'s eyes. They slowed down footage frame by frame like they were investigating a crime scene. And honestly, given the situation. But then came the real explosion, a supposed leaked voicemail. Nobody knows whether it's real. Nobody knows where it originated. But the voice in the recording sounded disturbingly close to Charlie's, saying, "If he thinks he can silence me, he's wrong. I'm not afraid of him." Internet detectives instantly decided he meant J.D. Vance. Whether that's true or not doesn't even matter. Because once social media accepts something as fact, it becomes a wildfire no PR team can contain. Meanwhile, Erika added another layer of intrigue by revealing Charlie felt someone was watching him. She mentioned he changed his routine, avoided certain events, switched his schedule at the last minute, and even hired additional private security for a short time. She didn't give specifics, she didn't need to. The implication alone was enough. Charlie wasn't scared of his enemies. He was scared of someone he once trusted, and then someone leaked old emails heavily redacted where Charlie requested independent review of certain activities. What activities? What documents? What deals? Everything was blacked out except the word independent, which made it sound like he couldn't trust his own circle. And who was his closest political ally during that time? J.D. Vance. At this point, even mainstream news outlets were forced to report on the situation, though they used carefully sanitized language like unverified claims, internet speculation, and ongoing discussions. But regardless of how cautiously they phrased it, the very fact that they were covering it lent legitimacy to the avalanche of rumors. J.D. Vance still said nothing. And that silence became louder every day. People online began forming theories that sounded like movie plots. But honestly, given the players involved, no theory felt too extreme. Some said Charlie discovered financial misconduct and planned to expose J.D. Others said J.D. was involved in backchannel deals Charlie refused to support. Some even suggested Charlie's mysterious folder contained proof of an internal political coup, and J.D. needed that folder gone before the information reached donors. Erika made things much worse when she confirmed that Charlie's final week was filled with tension, secrecy, and whispered phone calls he took away from her. According to her, Charlie kept repeating one line, "It's bigger than I thought." She reportedly begged him to step back, to slow down, to let it go, but Charlie insisted he had a responsibility. A responsibility to the truth, to transparency, to something he would not fully explain. And then, just days later, he died. The internet wasn't buying coincidence anymore. Too many pieces lined up. Too many loose ends suddenly made sense. Too many strange partnerships and last-minute changes felt connected. And the more Erika talked, the more the story spiraled into something that looked less like a political tragedy and more like a political elimination. Because at the heart of everything, every rumor, every leak, every anonymous tip, one name kept appearing. Over and over again, like a shadow attached to the narrative. J.D. Vance. And the deeper the internet dug, the more they realized they still hadn't reached the bottom. Because what comes next isn't just scandal. It's fallout, consequences, and revelations no one expected, not even Erika herself. Because what comes next isn't just scandal. It's fallout, consequences, and revelations no one expected, not even Erika herself. Because once the accusations reached critical mass, once every political commentator, internet investigator, and conspiracy hobbyist had exhausted every frame of footage and every scrap of leaked information, things moved into territory that even the most dramatic YouTube theorists didn't see coming. Government officials finally stepped in, not in a loud, dramatic, press conference kind of way. No, it started quietly like all dangerous things do. A late-night rumor that the Justice Department had requested access to archived files related to Charlie's last few months. Then whispers that a special inquiry was being formed not into Charlie's death directly, but into the political dealings and communications between certain high-profile individuals during that time frame. They never said J.D. Vance's name. They didn't have to. The internet said it for them every single hour without fail. What really set the whole situation on fire was the sudden resignation of a staffer connected to J.D. The staffer posted a vague message about prioritizing mental health and needing space from the environment, but the timing was so suspicious it practically announced guilt with a megaphone. Within minutes, conspiracies began multiplying. People claimed the staffer was the one who retrieved Charlie's missing folder. Some said he had been strong-armed into silence. Others believed he was afraid the truth would eventually surface, and he didn't want to be standing next to JD when it happened. Erika noticed all of this, and despite her earlier restraint, she kept talking. Not wildly, not dramatically, but deliberately, carefully, like someone peeling away the layers of a story she wished she didn't have to tell. She claimed Charlie once confided in her that not everyone around him wanted the same outcome. She said he felt boxed in, pressured, and monitored. She even hinted that Charlie had been threatened, not directly, but in the kind of political way where someone says, "I would hate to see you damage your career," and you understand exactly what they're really saying. People began revisiting Charlie's last interviews. In one clip, an interviewer asked Charlie about internal conflicts within the movement. Charlie laughed in a strange, nervous way and said, "Let's just say some people aren't who they pretend to be." Back then, everyone assumed he was talking generally. Now, people isolated that audio like it was the Zapruder film, debating every syllable, every micro-expression, every pause. Then came the biggest twist yet, a leaked financial audit from one of the organizations Charlie worked closely with. The audit flagged unusual fund transfers off the record payments and consulting agreements that didn't match the official books. None of the names were revealed. None of the recipients were shown. But people online claimed the timing of those irregularities perfectly aligned with J.D. Vance's rise in political influence. Suddenly, the questions shifted. Was this really about personal betrayal? Or was this about money, power, and control over a political empire Charlie was no longer fully aligned with? The theories collided, merged, and mutated. Some said Charlie discovered JD's financial dealings. Some believed Charlie planned to go public. Some insisted JD feared Charlie could dismantle alliances he desperately needed. And then there were the darker theories, the ones no one wanted to believe, but everyone kept whispering about. That Charlie's death wasn't incidental, wasn't unfortunate, wasn't accidental at all. That it was the unfortunate result of a political cleanup operation. The scariest part? These theories weren't coming from anonymous comment sections anymore. Former donors started asking questions. Junior politicians started distancing themselves from JD in public appearances. Even long-term allies were suddenly reluctant to say his name. And in politics, silence speaks louder than denial. J.D. Vance finally broke his silence, but instead of addressing Erika's accusations, he posted a broad, dismissive statement about internet misinformation and attention-seeking narratives. It was vague. It was arrogant. And worst of all, it didn't mention Charlie once. The internet erupted at the tone-deaf response. How could he ignore the man whose death he was allegedly linked to? How could he pretend Erika Kirk's statement wasn't the political earthquake shaking every corner of their movement? People began demanding answers. They begged for an investigation. They tagged law enforcement agencies, politicians, journalists, anyone who would listen. The pressure was suffocating. And the more people pushed, the more JD seemed to pull away from cameras and microphones. Meanwhile, Erika claimed she had more information she wasn't ready to release. That sent shockwaves everywhere. If she already dropped JD's name, what else was she holding back? What else was she protecting? And what exactly was she waiting for? Some believed she was collecting evidence. Others thought she was negotiating with legal advisors. But the strongest theory was simple. Erika was preparing for a moment where revealing everything would cause irreversible damage not just to J.D. Vance, but to the entire political machine built around him. By now, Charlie Kirk's legacy wasn't the story. His death wasn't even the story. The real story was the corruption, alliances, secrets, and power struggles tangled behind the curtain. A curtain that Erika ripped just enough for the world to glimpse what was hiding behind it. And yet, even with all the leaks, whispers, resignations, inquiries, and scandals, one truth remained. The public still didn't know the full picture. The missing folder remained missing. The motives remained unclear. The accusations remained unanswered. And the consequences, whatever they were going to be, were still gathering momentum, like a storm waiting for the final bolt of lightning. And that's why people can't stop asking the same question. After everything that's been revealed, after everything that's been hinted at, after all the shadows around Charlie's final days, what else does Erika know? Because whatever she hasn't said yet might be the very thing that destroys everything J.D. Vance built, and everything Charlie Kirk died trying to expose,